Connie Chung. Tonight, an eye-to-eye exclusive. Did you kill Dr. Britton and James Barrett?
Yes, I most certainly did.
He opened fire on an abortion clinic, calling it justifiable homicide.
I don't believe that killing someone is intrinsically wrong.
Now, this former minister faces the electric chair. A chilling interview. Paul Hill talks for the first time.
I know for a fact that I'm going to go to heaven when I die.
We had no idea what it was.
Suddenly, infant life support systems go haywire.
We ask that you do not use portable electronic devices.
We could have crashed.
Could your high-tech toys trigger a disaster?
Did a 180 and just took off.
An eye-to-eye investigation.
Get up out of bed in the morning with your dukes up, you know? Got him up. First punch is yours.
The kid talked tough. What about the woman?
I tend to like to act like I'm impermeable. And to me, that's how I cope with the world.
A revealing look at Hollywood powerhouse Jodie Foster.
By the end of the year, I think I'm going to rebel heavily.
Those stories and who says short guys can't jump?
If you can do this, anybody can do anything.
Tonight on Eye to Eye.
It's Eye to Eye with Connie Chung, with correspondents Bernard Goldberg, Edie Magnus, Russ Mitchell, Roberta Baskin, and Bill Lagatuta.
Good evening. They were the shotgun blasts heard around the world. A doctor and his escort gunned down early one morning. The man who did it claimed he was morally justified. Why? One of his victims was an abortion doctor. Tonight, an eye-to-eye exclusive, inside the mind of a double murderer, Paul Hill. He smiles, even in handcuffs and leg shackles, even as he faces the electric chair.
Morning, Connie. How are you this morning?
When he speaks, his tone is surprisingly calm. Paul Hill has been convicted not once, but twice at federal and state trials. In just 5 days, he'll learn whether Florida will put him to death for the double murder. Last week, Hill sat down for his first interview since the crime. Tell me about yourself. Who is Paul Hill?
Who is Paul Hill? I'm certainly not ready for that question. I haven't come up with a good one for that yet.
The nation asked that same question just 4 months ago when Paul Hill took a 12-gauge pump-action shotgun and murdered abortion doctor John Britton and his volunteer escort James Barrett. Hill fired 7 times into Barrett's silver truck as he arrived with the doctor at the Ladies Center Clinic. Barrett's wife June was wounded. The murders were brutal, but Hill's words may be every bit as shocking as his actions.
The killing of a person is not intrinsically wrong. The killing of an innocent person is wrong. The killing of a guilty person is not wrong if the person deserves death.
And which category do you think you fit into?
There's no question that my actions were to defend the innocent, and therefore I'm certainly guilty of no crimes. As a matter of fact, my actions are honorable.
Most Americans believe what you did was a horrible crime. How do you justify it?
We know that if an evil man's about to kill an innocent, helpless child, it is okay to even kill him in order to defend that child. And so most people don't realize that the unborn are our children.
Pensacola is a Florida beach community that's also known as the Buckle of the Bible Belt. Its deep religious conviction has fueled a strident anti-abortion movement. The seeds of violence may have been planted in 1984 when 4 abortion clinics were bombed.
Stop the killing now!
The anti-abortion movement wasn't what brought Paul Hill and his family to Pensacola in 1991. He was a former minister, starting over with an auto paint touch-up business. Hill lived with his wife Karen and 3 young children in this middle-class neighborhood. Then last year, a man named Michael Griffin murdered Pensacola abortion doctor David Gunn. The crime transfixed the nation.
It literally changed my life.
and transformed Paul Hill.
Michael Griffin had the guts to kill a man to protect innocent children, then I could at least have the fortitude to proclaim that what he did was justified.
Nobody supported his views or rhetoric. And I know people like myself would not even go to the clinic knowing that he was holding, that disgusting sign.
Vicki Conroy also opposes abortion, accosting women as they arrive at clinics, tracking down abortion doctors.
Taking a baby out of the mother's womb.
Like Paul Hill, she often protested at the 2 abortion clinics in town. But to Vicki Conroy, militance is one thing. Murder is quite another.
A woman has a legal right to walk into any clinic across the United States and pay to have her baby killed. Paul Hill did not have a legal right to pull the trigger and blow the heads off of 2 individuals in that parking lot.
At first, Paul Hill talked about killing, but claimed that he couldn't pull the trigger.
I don't feel an obligation to myself use violence or encourage anyone else directly to do that.
Then, not long after Michael Griffin's conviction, it became more than talk.
When did you decide that you would kill Dr. Britton?
I think I'll pass on that one.
You purchased the gun 2 days before the killing. Was it with the intention of killing Dr. Britton?
Oh, yes.
And you went to a practice range on that day and the next day for target practice?
Right. Do you mind if we avoid the particulars?
Early on the morning of July 29th, Paul Hill took his Mossberg shotgun and drove to the Ladies Center Clinic.
You took 30 rounds of ammunition with you. You were fully aware of what you were doing.
There's no question about that.
It was over in seconds.
I went up to one police officer and asked him what happened. And he just shook his head and said, 2 people have been killed. And I said, tell me it wasn't Paul Hill.
A doctor and a volunteer.
Paul Hill fulfilled his own violent anti-abortion murder at an abortion.
Murder suspect Paul
Now killed 74-year-old James Barrett.
My father was there to use his body as a shield between Dr. Britton and anybody who came to do Dr. Britton harm. He did it day after day. He asked no thanks. He got no money.
Bruce Barrett is James Barrett's son. He moved back to Pensacola only 3 days before his father was killed.
My father was not pro-abortion, and he believed in a woman's right to choose in this country.
When you killed Dr. Britton and James Barrett, did you think about their families?
No. My attitude towards John Britton and James Barrett's family is that if they will acknowledge that the killing of their relatives served justice, then I can offer them my sympathy. But if not, the best way I can show my concern for them is to say to them that they should quit supporting child slaughter.
You just killed their loved one, and you're telling them to come around to your way of thinking?
Yes, and so they should actually thank me for loving the children that their relatives were about to kill enough to prevent their relatives from doing something that was cruel and unconscionable.
There are some people out there who would say, you are crazy.
I'm sure there are many people who believe that.
There's just a small pocket of nuts out there, and they're nuts, who want to blow somebody's brains out because of their beliefs.
Now's the time to defend the unborn.
Police arrested Paul Hill as he walked away from the scene. From the first, Hill's attitude toward his fate was almost casual, even arrogant.
Okay. Any questions at all? No, sir. Okay. I guess I can't think of any right now, sir.
Okay.
Are you cognizant of the fact that you have this rather constant grin on your face and this gleam in your eye?
No, I'm conscious of having a clear conscience, but I'm not really conscious of my face, or try not to be.
No one can possibly fathom that you would have a smile on your face today, knowing that you had just killed 2 people, that you're facing a possible life sentence or execution. Doesn't make sense.
Well, it makes sense from my perspective in that I have done something that I think the Lord is pleased with.
And if you would, indicate to the members of the jury where he's at, of course.
During the federal and subsequent state trials, Paul Hill acted as his own attorney. He called no witnesses and declined to cross-examine prosecution witnesses.
I have no questions for the witness, Your Honor.
Most of the time, he just sat, silent and smiling. June Barrett, James Barrett's wife, testified at both trials.
I looked through the seats there, and I saw this drip, drip, drip of blood drops, and I said, I kind of whispered, Doc, are you okay? And there was no answer. And I said, Doc, are you okay? No answer again. And then I opened my eyes a little wider and kind of turned my head, and I said, no, he's not okay.
When the legal proceedings ended, June Barrett left Pensacola. She told relatives she still fears for her life. Paul Hill's wife, Karen, also left Pensacola. Just 4 days before the murders, she took her children out of town. It's reported she also took at least $10,000 in cash. Paul Hill insists his wife did not know of his plan to kill.
I'd like to have the clerk publish those verdicts for us, please.
On October 5th, Hill was convicted on federal charges. A month later, the state trial jury returned a verdict in 20 minutes.
Count 1, guilty of first-degree murder of Dr. John Bayard Britton is charged in the indictment with a firearm.
The National Right to Life Group, the Catholic Church, Operation Rescue, all condemn what you have done.
Yes.
They say that pro-life means all life, unborn children and abortion doctors.
Well, when they say that, they're contradicting much of the Bible, much of history, and literature. They're contradicting common sense.
The sixth commandment is, thou shalt not kill. God commands you not to kill.
That's correct. What's forbidden in that commandment is killing. What's required is preventing the killing of innocent people, and that is what I did.
If he's going to use the Word of God, then he's going to have to use it accurately and truthfully. And according to the Word of God, Paul Hill's a murderer.
Are you a fanatic?
Depends on how you define a fanatic. Christ has told us to love him with all of our hearts. So I'm sure in many people's eyes, yes, I am a fanatic.
Do you think you're mentally stable?
Why don't we pass on that one, Connie?
Why?
It's just going to be hard to come up with a good, arable response to that one.
No, I don't understand. I mean, I can understand some of the other questions that you won't answer, but why is it that you're uncomfortable with answering whether or not you think you're mentally stable?
I just don't care to comment.
Has someone else questioned your mental stability?
If you ask another question like that, Connie, the interview's over.
Order to court, all rise, please. Circuit Court in force, County Court.
Yesterday, Hill was back in court. His wife was there. So were supporters and opponents. At issue, whether Hill should be put to death or serve life in prison. He spoke, only briefly.
Rather than appeal to you or plead with you for my life, I would rather call upon compassionate men to defend the unborn.
The judge will decide next week. And whatever Paul Hill's fate, many in Pensacola fear that just as Michael Griffin inspired him, Hill will prompt still another murder at another abortion clinic.
He's no aberration. There are other people out there that are ready to pull a trigger.
Do you think that you will be given the death sentence?
I honestly don't know. And to be quite frank with you, I entirely put that into the hands of the Lord, whether I'll have a life sentence or will I be put to death.
Can you accept being put to death?
Yes, definitely.
Do you think that you will go to heaven or hell when you die?
I know for a fact that I'm going to go to heaven when I die.
What does your cell phone have to do with the survival of these babies? An eye-to-eye investigation.
Created chaos.
And
what did you see, Clarice? What did you see?
She stood up to Hannibal Lecter. But how tough is Jodie Foster in real life?
I don't think they would ever say, oh, she's so sweet and she's so nice.
Infant life support systems in an intensive care unit suddenly sound an alarm. An airliner's compass mysteriously swings off course. An electric wheelchair spins out of control. What's the connection? We asked Roberta Baskin to investigate this growing high-tech phenomenon, which is scaring even the experts. Roberta?
Connie, whoever thought that you could trigger a hospital emergency by dialing your cell phone? Well, these wireless goodies are loaded with gremlins and can cause mayhem.
We live in a sea of electromagnetic energy. You can't see it, but it's everywhere, and few of us ever stop to consider its consequences. Cellular telephones, CD players, computers, two-way radios, TVs, all emit waves of energy, like radio waves.
And when the waves collide, for example, when this radio gets too close to this computer, you get electromagnetic interference, EMI.
We ask that you do not use portable electronic devices such as tape players, audio-video recorders, or players during taxi, takeoff, and landing.
If you've flown recently, you were probably warned about EMI.
Portable telephones cannot be used at any time on board the aircraft.
Ever wonder why?
We were on a climb out from our departure airport, and the first thing that I saw was a red flag popped up down in the lower left-hand corner.
Airline officials don't want to talk about EMI, but Denny Pistol will. For more than 25 years, he's been a pilot for one of the nation's biggest airlines. He was at the controls of a 727 when one after another, the compass, bearing, and distance measuring instruments all failed.
You're talking about losing your navigational equipment.
That's correct. That was exactly what happened, and we lost it on both systems, the primary and the backup, almost instantaneously. If we were in bad weather and dependent on our own navigation, the odds of coming out of that successfully would have been very, very diminished.
You could have crashed.
We could have crashed.
How did you figure out what was going on?
It was about that time that our flight service manager from the cabin came up, and she said, we have a big problem back here.
The problem was some passengers playing a radio, just a radio.
When they turned the radio off, did your instrumentation come back?
All of the instrumentation restored back to normal.
Perfectly normal?
Perfectly normal.
There have been more than 100 incidents of electromagnetic interference, EMI, reported by pilots, most anonymously. Several pilots report straying off course, one 13 miles off course, and suspects passengers playing electronic games are to blame. Another reports missing his landing approach twice.
When you see it firsthand, it really does make you a believer.
Automakers also are believers. They struggle with such problems as windshield wipers turning on and off, car doors locking, cruise control speeding up, all because of interference. The biggest concern is safeguarding airbags and anti-lock brakes. Chrysler, for example, is spending $20 million at this lab to test and shield cars against EMI.
But some of our most important electronic devices aren't well protected. Hospitals are finding out, often by accident, that interference with medical equipment can be life-threatening.
All the lights came on just like that.
Susan Ill never heard of EMI until it affected her son, Chris. He depends on a ventilator 24 hours a day. But one day, while driving home from the hospital, the ventilator alarm sounded wildly.
The whole machine just went haywire, and we didn't know why.
It wasn't until several months later, when it happened again, that Susan figured out that it was her cell phone that was triggering the problem.
I hung up the phone, and everything went back to normal again. When I take Christopher with me, I do not turn my phone on anymore. Twice is enough for me. There.
The babies in this intensive care unit also depend on ventilators for every breath. But nurses at Arkansas Children's Hospital got a scare when alarms on all 5 ventilators went off at once. Immediately, all available staff had to help the babies breathe by hand.
So we'd have to jump up and attend to the patient and make sure they were getting enough oxygen and getting breath.
Nurse Carol Winans was in charge the day the alarm sounded.
It created chaos.
Like this.
We had no idea what it was.
It took 4 days to figure out interference from a shuttle bus radio was the cause. At Indiana's St. Margaret Mercy, wireless monitors in the cardiac unit suddenly went haywire. It was tracked down to two-way radios miles away. That interference problem led hospital staff to look for others.
Here it goes right now.
Like a cell phone that can cause a ventilator to malfunction. A two-way radio that can shut down this drug infusion pump. And watch how a flip phone can trick this incubator into suddenly heating up without warning. And hospital personnel scrambled at Eastern Maine Medical Center when an alarm for the purified air system was set off by a security guard's two-way radio. A hospital director, Ron Gregory, sent out an alert on his computer bulletin board. There were responses from all over the world.
England, France, a lot of the United States. In Norway, it is now common that the use of cellular phones are not permitted inside hospital buildings.
I thought, gee, maybe our equipment is affected too.
In New Jersey, emergency medical technician Jan Walitsky got the message and tried an experiment of his own. He turned on his two-way radio near his defibrillator, a critical care device that shocks the heart during cardiac arrest.
Check pulse. And as you see, the defibrillator told me to check the patient's pulse. It did not charge up to shock.
When he showed the experiment to us, the defibrillator failed about half the time.
It wouldn't have shocked the patient, and the patient who might have been able to be saved would not have been saved.
In fact, the Food and Drug Administration knows of 6 reported cases where electromagnetic interference is believed to have caused defibrillators to fail. There are more than 100 reported incidents involving all kinds of medical devices, including 5 suspected deaths.
Manufacturers of these devices are increasingly aware of the potential for problems, and they're doing a considerable amount of research.
And the FDA is also doing research. Dr. Bruce Burlington oversees the testing. Virtually all electronic medical devices are susceptible to interference. But so far, the FDA has set standards for only a handful of devices.
We're certainly looking at equipment like respirators, equipment like pacemakers, and equipment like powered wheelchairs, where if something goes wrong, it obviously has potential tremendous impact on the person who's relying on that device.
This is where we were just going up.
You don't have to tell that to Jim Hill. He's a Korean War veteran living just outside of Denver. He took us back to the scene of a wheelchair accident that almost killed him.
What was the first clue that there was something that wasn't quite right?
The clicking noise. Just started making a clicking noise. And all of a sudden, the wheelchair just did a completely 180, just like this.
By itself?
Just by itself. And I just took off, and I was just going so fast. And I went...
Right off here?
Right off here.
And how far a drop is that?
I'd say probably 15, 18 feet. The wheelchair tipped like this. Then I went down first, and the wheelchair came down, lit on top of my chest. And I just went tumbling down there.
And you were critically injured?
They thought I was dead. I did too.
You still have real strong memories?
Oh, every night. I have nightmares every night. Goes off the cliff.
It's not clear what happened to Jim Hill. It may have been interference from nearby transmission towers or from somewhere else. What is clear is that there have been several cases of wheelchairs spinning out of control, prompting the FDA to conduct its own tests.
That wheelchair is not being controlled anyway except by the radio frequency interference from that handheld radio.
The FDA has now told manufacturers to make electric wheelchairs resistant to EMI. Although Jim Hill has a new chair, he's still wary.
No matter how safe they say that they are, I just don't. I don't think I'll ever have trust and forget.
It's no wonder Jim Hill is fearful. There's so much that's not known about electromagnetic interference, except that our greater reliance on electronic devices almost guarantees more problems.
So what's being done Well, some manufacturers are adding warnings to their product literature. Others are looking for better ways to shield devices from interference, as the car manufacturers have done. But in the meantime, some hospitals, like the airlines, are already banning cell phones. So, Connie, this is something that we're going to be hearing a lot more about.
All right, thank you, Roberta. Coming up, one of the biggest stars in Hollywood and the littlest star in the NBA. When Eye to Eye continues in a moment, her new movie, Nell, could win her another Oscar. Jodie Foster's in the driver's seat. But what drives Jodie Foster?
I feel like I constantly have to prove myself.
Also, they told him he was too small to play with the big boys. But Mugsy Bogues proved he's a giant.
Nobody in the history of the NBA has been 5'3". Yeah. Nobody.
She was a late bloomer, didn't hold down a job until she was 3, and she's been working an incredible 29 of her 32 years. Now, Jodie Foster has her own production company. Its first film, Nell, will start hitting movie theaters on the 14th. We found out Jodie Foster once seriously considered going into journalism. She wanted to anchor the news. So we thought she would get a kick out of going behind the scenes with us when I anchored the evening news from Los Angeles one night.
Watch out.
Hi, Jodie.
Oh, my God. Hello. How are you?
Jodie Foster, high-powered, yet totally unassuming.
You look smaller now.
I guess that's what they always say to you, don't
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Only they say you look much smaller.
She dreamed of being a broadcaster.
It's one of my great fantasies. I'd get in front of the mirror all the time and I would make up the news. How old were you when you were doing it? 8, 9, 10, 25.
Instead, she spent her life on Hollywood backlot.
The killer tropical storm that goes by the name of Gordon.
As a young kid, the only profession I really wanted to have was I wanted to be a talker because that's what I really like to do.
A talker.
I just wanted to talk, and I thought that maybe there was a profession called being a talker. And
There is, sort of.
quickly
It's
my
called
mind,
acting. Foster started quietly at the age of 3 as the Coppertone Kid.
This is how you were described as a child. Model child.
Model child?
Yes.
Correct? Oh, you mean like a model child?
Yes.
Because I was not too cute.
Yes, you were. The Coppertone girl?
Yeah, well, that's just because it was just my butt. What 3-year-old's butt is not model? I don't know.
Why?
Foster grew up in our living rooms.
Get up out of bed in the morning with your dukes up, you know? Got him up, the first punch is yours.
She's made one movie for almost every year of her life and earned a reputation as always responsible and fiercely independent.
You can't go through life alone. I ain't alone. I got me.
Hi.
Foster, who insists on her privacy, is driven to be regular in her life, even to the point of always driving herself, doing her own laundry, grocery shopping, and cooking.
I think that I am neurotically very, very, very sensitive to wanting to be as much a real person as possible. And if I see a red light that says, you're going to go down this star path and that's going to cut you off from being more of a real person, then I'll take another path. And I think in some ways that's been a neurosis.
You want to come over to my house and play?
But can a real person survive in a town that will eat you alive? Foster almost was while making this movie at age 8.
Real live lion.
The lion picked her up in his mouth. She had to be hospitalized, yet Foster insisted on finishing her scenes.
I didn't know I was allowed to say no. Or I didn't know that I was allowed to say, you know, I don't really like this, or you know, that hurt my feelings. I thought that if I said no, that they'd fire me.
What did that mean to you?
I didn't know, but I knew it was a really bad thing.
Before she could write, she was financially supporting her family.
Is it really 12 and a half?
Listen, mister, it's your time. 15 minutes ain't long.
At age 12, Foster grabbed her first Oscar nomination for the riveting portrayal of Iris, a preteen hooker in Taxi Driver. But Jodie Foster, the realist, was also a pragmatist.
I couldn't imagine I would have a career after 16 or 17. And I pretty much went to college thinking this would be it, and I would go off and find a new profession for myself.
Foster went off to Yale, but her college career was disrupted in 1981.
The man accused of the shooting, John Warnock Hinckley Jr., left an unmailed letter, reportedly revealing an obsessive infatuation for a young actress.
The assassination attempt is a subject Foster says she wants to put behind her. Fast forward, the year is 1988.
It was the turning point, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that's probably why the performance in some ways is very courageous for me.
Until the accused, Foster says she was about to quit acting after a string of flops.
It was an enormous risk for me.
Why was it a risk?
I said, well, I'm going to go for broke.
You don't understand how I feel.
She played the victim of a brutal gang rape.
I'm standing there with my pants down and my crotch hung out for the world to see, and 3 guys are sticking it to me, and a bunch of other guys are yelling and clapping, and you're standing there telling me that that's the best you can do.
I was sure that was really bad and that I was going to have to go back to grad school and really try and make that work, maybe.
Instead, Foster won the Oscar, and her career exploded.
What did you see, Clarice? What did you see?
Lambs. After her second Oscar for Silence of the Lambs, she's now one of the highest-paid actresses in Hollywood, earning over $5 million a film.
I do finally, maybe in the last 2 years, believe that I actually am kind of that I'm an accomplished actor, and I never thought that I was. I thought I was just an imposter.
Do you think that winning 2 Oscars helped convince you in some way?
Yeah, winning 2 Oscars helps. And I never thought I would win because they were all grown-ups and they were all real serious actors, and I was an imposter. I mean, you know this syndrome. It's a syndrome that drives me because I feel like I constantly have to prove myself.
People would say, this is not the glamorous Hollywood movie star image, you know.
That drive has paid off. Foster now has an unprecedented $100 million production deal that funds her own company. The stakes are high.
My feeling is that every movie that I'm involved in is a life or death film for me.
Foster is now on the line with the release of her first production, Nell.
I don't understand now. What's music?
It's a film that Foster also stars in, about a woman raised in the woods who speaks a language all her own.
Oh, I've got it. Miss Little. Little. Arna. Big.
In fact, Nell is the opposite of Jodie Foster.
Nell is an incredible antidote. Wow. If she wants a popcorn, she wanna the popcorn. Instead of, Jodie, who, when she wants the popcorn, would say, I've been thinking.
Well, you're nothing like Nell, then I'm telling you.
And, no, I think of myself in some ways as a real socialized cynic, Whenever you see somebody like that, you know that somewhere down deep they're a horrible romantic, and that they are somebody who is, in fact, extremely emotional, and that they've had to build these barriers of cynicism to protect that.
You're saying your emotional side comes out in your movies.
I allow it to, because I know I'm safe. I know that, I won't fall off a cliff, and that there'll be 75 people there just in case I do, and that if I look really foolish, we can always cut it out.
You are, without a doubt, a very private person.
Right.
What is it about your privacy that is so important to you?
Well, I think, I've always considered my work a 9 to 7 job. And I don't see why anybody would want to continue working after 8 o'clock if they didn't have to. This is just me. I'm not saying anything about anyone else. But I could never do one of those, one of those magazine things where they come to your house and they take pictures of it and they go, this is your couch and this is, I bought this engraving here and the decorator says that he thought the flowers I would die of embarrassment. When I go to sleep,
yeah.
I think up sentences and then I type them. I type them like this. And I imagine where the P's and the T's and the S's are.
Even with all the power Foster has earned in Hollywood, you can't help but get the feeling that she's still, in many ways, the hard-working model child who can't say no.
I get the feeling that, to this day, you still haven't rebelled. Is that right?
You're right. I think it's coming.
After this year of having worked so much, and I know that I'm on another path of working, I think by the end of the year, I think I'm going to rebel heavily.
Don't you think you deserve to rebel?
I'm going to put it on my schedule.
When we come back, what's a peewee like this doing playing basketball? Mugsy Bogues took on the NBA. Now he takes on Bernie Goldberg.
You're a guy who was told 10,000 times, you'll never make it. Screw the people that tell you that you can't make it.
I happen to be a big pro basketball fan. My husband and I go to New York Knicks games all the time. So one night, Mugsy Bogues is playing. He dribbles by me in the middle of the game and says, "Hi, Miss Chung." This guy is my hero, and a lot of people's hero. Bernard Goldberg is here to tell us why. Bernie?
Connie, every now and then you meet someone who's really inspiring. And tonight, we have a short story.
Let's go, play.
About a gazillion kids play basketball in the world.
Your face.
And only a few hundred make it to the NBA. Welcome to the land of the giants, where people can fly, and everyone is bigger than life. Well, almost everyone. Say hello to Mugsy Bogues, who at 5'3", that's right, 5'3", is the shortest player in the NBA. The shortest player in the history of the NBA. And who, as you can see, is a pest who drives the big guys nuts. Didn't anyone ever tell you, Mugsy, that at 5'3", you're not supposed to be a professional basketball player?
Heard it all the time. They always tell me, Mugsy, you're not going to grow, so you need to find another sport.
Let's go. But surely his high school coach, Bob Wade, thought Mugsy could make it.
Bernie, really, I did not.
You didn't go to work today?
But his big brother, Chuck. Chuck knew one day Mugsy would be a star. Right?
Oh, no.
I never said anything to him about his height.
Well, that's what mothers are for, to boost your confidence when everyone else is knocking it down. Did you think Mugsy would ever make it in the pros?
No, I didn't.
Despite all those votes of confidence, he has made it. And make no mistake, Mugsy Bogues is not some novelty act. He's been in the league 8 years, and nobody survives in the NBA unless he's good. Nobody.
I know why I'm here. The reason that I'm here is not because anybody did a favor for me. Anybody, lend a helping hand. It's because I worked at it.
He's right about that. Yes! The world of sports is one of the few places left in America where success is based on merit, not on seniority and not on who you know, which is why Mugsy Bogues is a lot more than a basketball player. He's a symbol.
I'm a guy out there representing every average American who believe that they can do something in life. But it all starts within your heart. I mean, if you can't believe it, you can't see it, you can't vision it, it's not going to happen for you.
Is that what it's about?
That's what it's all about. That's what it comes down to. If you don't believe in yourself, it's very difficult for the next person to believe in you.
Well, you have no shortage of confidence.
No, none whatsoever.
Hey, boy.
Thank you very much. Say hi to him.
What's up, little kid? What's up, my man? How you doing?
God bless you.
Thank you, boy.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
This is where Mugsy Bogues came from.
How y'all doing?
The Lafayette Projects in Baltimore.
Yeah, this is the neighborhood here, big fella.
This is where gunshots were as common as dogs barking, he says. And even the basketball court was no safe haven.
It was dangerous on the court. I mean, I can recall playing. We had a little incident. The guy got mad and went home and got his gun and came back, and the guy got shot. I mean, every time you left out your house, it was a challenge because you didn't know, you had to constantly look over your shoulder because you didn't know what was going to happen.
Did you have friends who were killed?
Yeah, I had friends who I was killed. I had one was when we was 13 years old.
In fact, Mugsy Bogues was shot once.
Yeah, I got shot in my arm.
What was that about?
It was about I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. And
he was shot by a storekeeper who thought, incorrectly, everyone agrees, that Mugsy broke his window. How old were you?
I was 5.
5 years old?
5 years old. Still got a pellet shot right there in my arm. Right there. Yeah.
No, this is not Norman Rockwell's America. In this America, simply surviving is an accomplishment.
To me, it's my mansion. It's gorgeous.
He gives a lot of credit to his mother, Elaine, who now lives in the suburbs, in this house that Mugsy bought her.
It was scary, but I taught my children to be strong, to be a fighter. And I guess by them being strong and fighting made them survive.
And he learned something from his father, too. He learned that life on the street was no life at all.
We had a snowstorm about 26 inches in Baltimore, and there was a lot of looting going on outside. And my pops ran out there and he brought a television in the house, and my mom asked him where he got the television from. And so she made him take the television back. He couldn't bring it in our house.
That was a lesson not just for your father, but I imagine that was a lesson for you too.
We didn't have much in as far as material things, but she kept on, she held on to her principles.
Mugsy Bogues has a new book out, In the Land of Giants, which he dedicates to his father, Richard Bogues, a man who served 12 years in prison for armed robbery, and who Mugsy believes was probably using drugs when he died of pneumonia in 1993.
He lived that life, he lived the life of the streets, and I learned from that. But, I understood once I got older the things that he was doing, never turned my back on him when he went in. Always kept in touch with him. And, to the day he passed away, we had a close relationship.
Mugsy Bogues might have been more like his father, but he made a decision to go another way.
I'm not the all-American kid here. I did my wrongdoings, and I paid for them.
Like what?
Stealing, getting involved with drugs early. But I was able to get away from it. I was able to really just, want more out of life.
Your host tonight, 5'3" guard.
He went back to Baltimore recently to host and play in a charity game to raise money for educational programs for kids from the old neighborhood. And off the court, the little man is getting bigger every day, making the most of his shortness.
Stature was to battle the giant.
He does soft drink commercials,
switch and save 20%,
and telephone company commercials,
My favorite jeans.
and jeans commercials.
Mugsy Bogues.
He's big in Paris,
Mugsy Bogues.
and even bigger in Japan. And he scored on Letterman, too.
If you can do this, anybody can do anything. I mean, that ought to be the lesson people take away from your life and your abilities. It's a great thing.
And after you've been with him for a while, you understand that Mugsy Bogues is a little man only if you measure stature in feet and inches.
As you're growing up, no kid, I don't care who you are, no kid like to be joked on or would be laughed at. And people saying that you can't play it, you shouldn't play it because of your height. I really took that to heart. That made me just motivate me more to go out there and prove everybody wrong.
You're a guy who was told 10,000 times, you'll never make it. Kids out there every day are told they'll never make it. So what do you say to those kids?
I'll tell them, screw the people that tell you that you can't make it. Believe in yourself. Just take it one step at a time and give the effort.
By the way, he was born Tyrone Bogues. He got the nickname Mugsy because he was always mugging the guy with the ball, which I found out about the hard way.
Oh, not again. Not again.
What's it like being 5'3", playing against guys 6'8"?
Well, I believe it's like stand up here against a big giant. And you're constantly like this, looking up. So in order to get them to your level, you got to play with them down here. See, you chop a tree down, eventually it's going to fall.
So what if a guy's bigger than you and decides to do that?
Woo! I can't get beat on my home court. I can't. Home court advantage. Woo!
Now, do you ever just want to go up there and dunk over some 7-footer's head?
Oh, that's a dream of mine.
Can you dunk?
Can't dunk.
You can't dunk?
Can't dunk a basketball.
Give me the ball. Let me show you.
Yeah, Brady, that was great.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm very proud of you. You really can slam dunk.
Yeah, why would you ask me that? Of course.
You really can?
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, Bernie. We'll be right back. Here's a look at next week's Eye to Eye. Do you have a kid who is too short?
Kids would start saying, oh, ha, ha, look at you, you're so small, ha, you're a shrimp.
But are doctors and drug companies pushing growth hormone drugs on kids who don't need them?
The doctor is charged with taking more than $1 million.
This doctor has already been indicted. Now the heat is on. 3 separate government investigations are underway.
Money is the name of the game in this, regrettably.
And she was too sexy for Miss America. But she's not too sexy for Broadway.
I've let go of being bitter or thinking of it as revenge.
Vanessa Williams' amazing comeback. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll see Eye to Eye again next Thursday. Tomorrow on CBS This Morning, is Jesse Helms too hot for the new Republican Senate? A look at the most controversial conservative in the country. Good night, everybody.
Tonight, Dana Carvey, Toad the Wet Sprocket, and a whole lot more on The Late Show with David Letterman. Thanks for watching CBS. Now, your local news.
Coming up tonight on News 3, gas is a go. Parking is an issue this time of year. What side is the right side? Some rule changes in downtown Madison. And it should feel more like winter, but the forecast is quite mild. Janet's update and more tonight at 10.